This is the One Piece Podcast, episode 525 for the week of Monday, June 25th. My name is Ed.
And my name is Steve.
And on the show this week, we have our very special guest, the translator for One Piece and Weekly Shonen Jump, Stephen Paul.
Hey, you still got me.
Yes, that's because we're doing a Volume 89 recap this week of all the SBSs and all the other little bits that we cover, and the Panda Man, of course. So, look forward to that. It's a little low energy. We're recording this a little early.
and there's few of us, and also we don't have my usual enablers on the podcast to put me on an 11 here. So you got tranquil Steve right now.
But that's not the only thing we have on this episode. We also have an interview with Bob Mackey from the Talking Simpsons podcast. So that's our, I think Alex called that our Romance Dawn segment, for having on people who are reading One Piece but aren't all the way caught up. So enjoy that. I haven't listened to it yet, so I'll be very interested to hear it too.
And pretty sure you'll get to hear not only me but Zach as well on that.
Right? Yeah.
Maybe not so much Zach, but if you've been missing Zach like we all have, you know, he sprinkled in there.
Right on. All right, so next week we'll have the manga will return. We'll have a manga recap of chapter 909. Oh, but also this week we have an anime recap of episode 842 with Sam coming up, so we'll have that as well. So next week will be 843. And we did have a couple of things we wanted to mention. First, Steve, you were saying that Oda had contributed some artwork this week to a wrestling event?
Yeah, Minoru Suzuki, big-time scary One Piece fan, wrestler man. My dream adoptive father. I'm not gonna get into that. Yeah, he celebrated his 30th anniversary as a professional wrestler, and he had a big event that he threw himself. Was it in a harbor or something?
It was it was in Yokohama near the down by the bay there, because it was like it was a really cool building that was in front of like this red brick warehouse kind of looking thing. It was pretty cool looking.
But if you don't know about Minoru Suzuki, he's a big One Piece fan. He's even had a cameo in the One Piece anime in that one Chopper Man spin-off episode. Oda was
inducted into Suzuki-gun, the Suzuki Army faction.
He was?
Yeah, he has his own tracksuit.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So anyway, Oda contributed. He contributed some artwork for it. It's just a little chibi version of Suzuki in a pirate hat and a pirate coat. And just another interesting fact, there was a big rainstorm that day, I guess. I don't want to say monsoon, but it was pouring rain, and he went out and wrestled anyway.
Wow.
Because it was an outdoor event, and there's no canopy over the ring or anything, and him and Kazuchika Okada wrestled in a 30-minute time limit draw. And read up on Minoru Suzuki. He's amazing, and he loves One Piece and Hello Kitty.
And also one final thing, we also have just to remind everyone, at Anime Expo this year coming up, July 5th through 8th, we have the One Piece Escape Room, another Romance Dawn event, and don't forget to check that out. I don't have any more information about it, but I'd be excited to go. Steve, you'll be participating, right?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of I don't know if we've announced anything, but I know I will be taking part in it with our good friends at Viz. I believe it's kind of like an escape room. You use your smartphone, which is really keeping up with the times.
Yeah.
Congrats. But it should be interesting. I don't know anything about it, and honestly, I kind of want to go in blind. I think it'll be a lot more fun and entertaining that way.
Well, based on the image, it seems to use some augmented reality, so that's probably the part with your phone. Yeah. So that'll be cool.
Maybe be catching One Piece Pokemon. I don't know.
Maybe. All right. So I think that's it for the intro here. You just want to get straight into the volume recap?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Cool. This is the Volume 89 segment. Bad End Musical is the title. We're going to be going through all the cool things in this volume, like the SPS questions. But why don't we start right here on the cover, Stephen?
Actually, I'm gonna pull a swerve on you guys
Hmm.
because I want to talk just for like 3 minutes or so about a different book. I haven't seen a lot of people talking about this, but it came out the same day as Volume 89 in Japan, called One Piece Doors.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I saw that at Kino.
Yeah. So this is a special little book. So the word Tobida in Japanese means door, and if you say Tobida E, which means door art, that refers to the illustration that graces the cover page of a chapter. And so, with all this talk that we've been doing about color walks and the color spreads and stuff, this is kind of the opposite. This is basically just collecting all of his black and white, chapter covers, including, of course, the cover stories. And I think this first one, there's two of them. One came out in early June, first week of June, with Volume 89, and there's the second one coming out first week of July. And I picked up the first of these along with the Volume 89, and it's kind of neat. It's they reproduce it so that like the in the cover stories, the subtitle, like the description of what is happening, is actually where the chapter title usually goes, and then the chapter title is like down in the corner, so you get a really good look at what the art of the cover page. And
is it on tankobon quality paper or?
Yeah, it's just like any other Japanese volume of One Piece, but it's close to 300 pages, so it's a little on the fat side. But that means it only goes up to chapter 305. It goes through Ace's cover story, and in between the different segments, they'll have like little like sort of like columns where they kind of explain like, okay, here's what Oda usually draws in between the cover stories, where it's like you see the Straw Hats hanging out with animals and kind of doing goofy stuff, and then as like a pre and post thing for the cover stories themselves, they'll say like, okay, here's Buggy, this is what happened to Buggy right before this cover story, and then this is what's happened to him in the story after this happened. And so it kind of provides a bunch of context for what you're seeing.
What's it say about Eneru?
I don't think. I don't think Eneru's in this one. It'll be the second one.
Be interested to see what he's been up to since the end of his cover story.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't say. I mean, it's not giving you anything new. It's just putting it into context. It's like, okay, here's what we've learned since then. So it really, unless you're kind of a completionist, it's not an essential book by any means. But if you want to have like a very handy place to flip through and see an entire cover story in one go, it's kind of neat. And so it's a fun little book. But as I said, very inessential.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess Databook Green's a little outdated now. Because those had the cover stories, but
that was back in 2010, I think.
God.
Remember where I was living when we recorded that?
Yeah, I think those are only the pre-time skip cover stories. By the way, do we not call them cover stories anymore? Do we got to call them doors now?
No, I think we're good. So yeah, there you go. That's a little blurb on One Piece Doors. If you ever see that at a Kinokuniya or any other Japanese bookstore. But let's get into the volume itself. 89, and I don't think I was actually on the episode where you guys initially reacted to the cover reveal. So yeah, this one is wow, it's very dynamic.
Yeah, they showed they get the mirrors, but the mirrors aren't really reflecting anything. It's still pretty cool looking though. Yeah,
it's Luffy and Katakuri facing off, and I was kind of torn. I feel like the general consensus among the fans was that like this was a super awesome cover, and in some ways I agree. Although it's just like my pet peeve is like I still find it to be very cluttered. For being a one-on-one, like only having two characters on it, it still looks as crowded as as his usual covers. But
I am a sucker for foreshortening, and so I just really like this one. I think mainly Luffy's snake arm. The technique escapes my mind, but it just looks really cool, despite it being not too much detail on it. It's just still really fun to look at, and Katakuri's arm draws you to the title, and
people don't notice the spikes back there. Those are sharp looking.
It's really cool, but cluttered. Yeah, I guess I'm just used to it with Oda. That's why it's really weird. I don't know if it was no, I don't think it was an older One Piece manga. Just like off tangent. I think these days now, if I read any other manga, I get really confused because Oda forgot what negative space is like. Oh, actually, it's the latest manga chapters. I think because they're up in Marie Joie and there's so much sky. I'm like, something seems different about these pages. And everyone's like, oh, there's not a million things happening in the background. So yeah, Oda and clutter. He's the antithesis of Toriyama. Just got to get used to it.
Yeah. He evolved himself to that point.
I feel like the Toriyama and Oda dynamic is just going to lead to like the cliche in the movie when the apprentice just becomes evil and their powers become out of control. Oda isn't evil. I'm sorry.
Well, he's certainly going different places. That's for sure. Speaking of going places, let's go to the underside of this. This cover.
There's one character who's flying.
Yeah, he's going somewhere. Yes. The Panda Man participation hour here is as you can see, he was I guess we're meant to believe that Panda Man was standing in between Luffy and Katakuri as they were fighting, and Luffy's snake punch basically knocked him over Katakuri's shoulder, and like I don't know if this was by design, but it kind of looks like with that kind of gouge in the wall, it almost looks like he was trying to Yamcha him, in the in the groove in the ground.
Well, that was already there, so
yeah.
But he just fits right in.
Wait, yeah. Katakuri, don't move. There's a Panda Man on your shoulder.
So
get it.
There is your Panda Man sighting for the volume 89 cover. Now, the author comment comes with some caveats here because, if you haven't followed the news, this actually caused some controversy. So I'll read the comment first, and then I'll kind of explain what's going on here. So Oda's comment, as originally provided, was when everybody is gathering around or having a group meal, and you've got a big old plate of fried chicken, and everybody eats their fill, and then there's just like one little piece that's left behind. I've decided to give that piece a name, and it is Sergeant Yokoi. And he says, so it's like, Sergeant Yokoi is still left on the battlefield. Someone has to bring an end to this war. And then in a little small text, he says, like, kids, if you don't recognize this, go look it up in a history book. And then he finishes like, I'm embarrassed to admit that volume 89 is about to begin. So yeah, if you don't know your kind of Japanese World War II history, Sergeant Yokoi was an officer who was, I believe he was stationed on Guam in the Pacific Theater, and he I'm not entirely sure exactly of the details, but I believe like once the Americans kind of passed them, he went AWOL with some of his like squad mates or something in the jungles, and basically was kind of living like he's basically being a survivalist. Like he had a little hole or a little cave or something that he was living out of, and he was living there for like 20 years or so.
1972 is when they found him.
Okay, so over 25 years. Until they found him, and they brought him back to Japan, and he had this kind of whirlwind press tour and everything. And his quote at the time was, I'm embarrassed to admit I have survived. And So this obviously Oda's kind of making a joke about this, and it caught wind of some folks. There were definitely some
The Japanese right
kind of
wing.
some kind of provocateurs that seized upon that and made a big stink about that. And I'm sure kind of knowing the general nature of polite society in Japan, there are probably a lot of other people who said like, yeah, now that you mention it, like that's not cool. And so it caused quite a bit of a stir. And I don't think, in fact, like they issued an apology on the One Piece website, and I believe they're probably going to get another comment. They're probably going to like print all the subsequent printings of the volume with a different comment. So you're probably not actually going to see this in the English version.
Oh, man.
I'm not sure what the replacement will be, but yeah, that it seemed to have been a bit of a misstep.
Well,
but the headline, and geez, what we're seeing in the Western world these days, that headline scared the shit out of me for a moment. I was like, oh God, what did he? Oh, yeah, I guess.
A headline should read: Oda pisses off nationalists. Westerners don't care.
But yeah, to me, Oda, from what I've always heard, he just seems like a big grown child, and it's just him just like making a reference, and can't tell people they can't be offended. But these days, geez, well, with what happens, I was expecting so much worse.
Sure, yeah. So the content of
the
this
Japanese invaded Guam in the first place shouldn't have been there,
right.
And I don't know. It must have been hard for the guy living there. That's what I can say.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the content of this volume, this is a slightly larger one. We got 11 chapters, and it starts with Big Mom on the ship. That was chapter 890, and it ends with the titular bad end musical. I think pretty clearly Oda wanted to end the volume with that chapter and the song and dance routine. So we'll get into the SBS here. Let's see the first segment. We have a header with Luffy and Katakuri sharing some tea time and some donuts. And our first question here is about Strozen, who, if you may recall, sacrificed himself somehow to by turning the whole cake chateau into actual cake as it was collapsing. And then got knocked out in the process. And so the question is just, wow, did he just like land somehow directly on his right eye? Because it's really swollen. And he's like, wow, that's pretty agile of him. And then in very small text, it says, hi there, let's start the SBS. And Oda is like, yeah, I mean, it's not really his eye so much as like his whole right forehead. But yeah, that looks pretty bad. It's like, but it's, it's impressive that he managed to save everyone from that horrible potential disaster. And hang on, you just started it, didn't you? So the delayed reaction to the SBS title call.
Yep.
And there you go. A very important question. I'm sure we all wanted to know what was up with Strozen. Next question is about Nami and Caesar. It's saying that Nami really seems to be kind of she's pretty salty around Caesar, and she calls him trash and scum, and that he should have died and all that. Like, did she catch some of Robin's like nastiness? And he says, well, just think back on the Halcyon days of Punk Hazard, when Caesar was giving children drugs and calling his own subordinates guinea pigs and creating weapons of mass slaughter. Yeah, that's the kind of guy who does not deserve to live. He should be dead. And Nami, if anything, Nami is only nice to women and children. And so I would imagine that, given her nature, she would absolutely loathe someone like Caesar.
Robin's nastiness.
Yeah, that was a little surprising. I'm not sure if that reader was, going off of something else. I guess I don't know. Maybe like because she's
very direct.
When she turns cold on people, she's like, "Don't make that face in Chopper again."
Yeah, I would describe Robin more blunt than nasty.
But but I think in Japanese, speech, that's more offensive to be that direct.
Nami's just I'd say nasty women. Let's avoid that term.
Right.
Yes. Nami's always been spunky, and I and definitely Punk Hazard, but I think I relate more back to just her upbringing. She was abused child, so of course she would stick up for children and women too, and anyone who abused kids or women. Yeah, she'd give him hell. Screw Caesar. And sorry, Sam. Dude should be in the Straw Hats. He's entertaining. It's entertaining, but he's
but he should be dead. Yes.
Yeah, he should be dead.
All right. So our next question is about Katakuri, and this reader says, "Well, I would imagine that Katakuri clearly his favorite food is sweet stuff. He likes sweets. Does that mean that whatever what he doesn't like, what he can't eat, is spicy things?" And Oda says, actually, his least favorite food is very hot ramen. He says, this is apparently this is the natural enemy for Katakuri, who does not want anyone to see him eating. And actually, spicy things he's totally fine with. So I'm not sure exactly what the implication there is, that he can't hide the ramen behind his ruffle cape thing, or what. But there you go.
Maybe he tried once. That's how he got his scars.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that hot. The whole thing with mochi is moisture helps you get the stickiness out. So maybe having a lot of hot liquid would soften it up or something. And the next question about Katakuri is, how does he sleep? And Oda says, yeah, well, he makes it a point of his strength that he never puts his back on the ground, but he didn't say anything about the wall, so he could he'll sleep leaning against the wall, or sometimes not leaning against anything. He'll just stand straight up or sitting up upright, and he'll go to sleep that way. So there you go, all the questions you needed to know about Katakuri. And moving on to the next SBS segment, we have a header with Chopper, and looks like he's I don't know, he's making some candy or Valentine's or something for little Linlin. I don't know. This picture is very hard to parse.
He's making sweets, maybe? I don't know. Or he's still the heart.
There's a little.
This looks like God, it looks like the Hansel and Gretel something. I don't know. There's an oven back there.
There's a little mouse with a chef's hat on. So
the chart makes me think they're playing Operation. A Charlie horse. It's true.
Oh yeah, it's true. Oh no. You know what I think it is? That center chopper is like a pastry chopper. Because his little feet, his claws are acorns, and
his nose is a cherry.
His antlers are pieces of bread and stuff. So there we go. We solved it.
Emergency food.
Yeah, the first question is someone who says, "Hey Oda Sensei, I would like. Can you help my 3-year-old son marry one of Big Mom's daughters? I could really use a massive military force at my disposal, and Big Mom would get me the consummate house chores doer, and my super tough wife as well. She would get that in the bargain. Seems like a win-win for all parties." What do you say? And Oda's like, okay, well, maybe you should talk to Big Mom instead of me. Next question. So there you go. Next question is about more things about likes and dislikes of food. He says, Crocodile and Das Bones, what are their favorite and least favorite foods? I would imagine that since the company president loves his banana gators, that he would not eat bananas or gator meat. And my sister says that he probably would not like oranges or tangerines, since he's only got one good hand to peel them with. So
right, that would be hard for him.
Yeah, and so Oda reveals that Crocodile's favorite foods are gator meat and tomatoes, and his least favorite food is ketchup. And Mr. One's favorite food is raw ham, and his least favorite food is cooked pork. So,
well,
he says, okay, there you go. So really, like how difficult it is to eat, or whether he's keeping gators as pets or not, doesn't seem to factor into it. But looking at their likes and dislikes, man, these guys seem to be a pain in the ass to deal with when it comes to food. Liking tomatoes and not liking ketchup, and
right.
Well, I've always been very anti-ketchup for a long time, and I don't know, Crocodile. I think eventually you grow out of it.
He likes tomatoes, but he dislikes ketchup. That's a good reason for disliking ketchup. Liking actual tomatoes.
Crocodile strikes me as the kind of person who's like, hey, what do you want to get for dinner, hon? Oh, I don't know. You pick something. How about Chinese? I don't want Chinese.
Yeah, I think that's the implication here. Very, very weirdly picky. And our last question on this segment is kind of filling in the blanks here with some of these power-ups. Based on the comic and the anime, after Luffy uses Gear Fourth, he's got a 10-minute period where he can't use Haki, and it seems like there's a risk that fatigue might cause him to be unable to move or to do anything at all. And yet, in chapter 885, so that would be right at the end of Whole Cake, he seems to be moving around just like normal. So what happened? How did he remove that risk of fatigue? And Oda says, no, there's no actual, there's no inherent risk of being, unable to move afterwards. If he wants to, he can't. He still won't be able to use Haki, but he can run around if he needs to. In Dressrosa, after he used Gear Fourth, he just happened to have a bunch of people who stepped in to help save him. And so he was able to kind of preserve his power, or to conserve energy for his final blow after that, thanks to their help. But if he doesn't have anyone there to cover for him, he will make do as best he can. So there you go. It's only the Haki that he cannot use after that. And knowing the way that these powers kind of get foreshortened, I imagine at some point later in the series, he will also just be able to knock it, just rattle it out without having any drawback whatsoever. Just kind of seems to be how these things happen.
Yep.
The next SBS header, we have Luffy breaking through the mirror, and Sanji, Nami, and Chopper smiling in the pieces of the shattered mirror. And,
definitely inspired by the previous volume cover.
Yeah, that's true.
No, it's not a knock at all. I mean, it's like kids. We always at least with me, half the time I was always just redrawing things that already existed. But good on you, little whatever your name is here.
That's how you get your start. So the first question is about semla. Is semla real? I want to eat them. And Oda says, yep, semla are real. It's a Swedish treat. So in Christianity, there is a period called Lent where everyone goes on a fast. And he says, this was a long time ago. maybe not so, maybe not so much. But before they would go on their fast, the Swedish would eat semla, and so that whole part of the story of Elbaf was kind of modeled after real world history. And he says, "I've never eaten them either. I would like to try them too." So there you go. I'm a little bit surprised that with all of Oda's material resources that he hasn't gotten some semla made for him. The next question is about one of the towns here in Hogek Island. In volume 88, there's a mention of a town. So in Japanese, it was called Oshimuna Town, and I believe I called it Chock Full Town. And he says, is this based not on the name of a type of food, but from the phrase Oshimuna, which would mean, and it was originally spelled in katakana, but here it's spelled with the kanji, and so you can tell what the verb is, which means don't skimp out or don't hold back. And who is the minister of that island? And so Oda says, yeah, I know the name sounds weird when you just hear it on its own, but maybe if I describe it this way, it will make sense. So the island is Kinkoto, which would be like a safe. I think I'm going to translate this as like pantry island, chock full town. So it's the Minister of Finance, Noisette, who's the 15th son of Charlotte, and he's the one who manages the funds of Totoland, and so the idea is like not to hold back from spending money on on making good food, and so I'm going to tweak this a little bit so that it works with chock full, but you kind of get the idea.
I think we've seen him before. He has a ridiculous sort of bouffant hair and a big beard, and he wears feathers.
Yeah, that is the image that we get. And speaking of the lesser appreciated Charlotte siblings, we have a question about Charlotte Bavaroa, specifically about the little netting that comes down from the brim of his hat. And he's like, is this basically the same mysterious netting that used to be on old baseball caps? Those things sure were cool. And Oda says, yeah, wow, I'm glad you noticed that. He's like, yeah, they used to have those in the past. When I was a kid, every boy who wore a baseball cap had these weird little mesh things on it, and they're called in Japanese. So this is the tricky part, because I don't think this actually exists in non-Japanese hats. I've never seen this before, but it's this little kind of cloth netting thing that folds up on the front of the cap. So, behind the logo, It would be like an extra layer of padding, and you can pull it down, and that's what Bavaroa is doing. And so it kind of
so specific.
It looks like these little shades almost.
Yeah, I thought they were
sunglasses.
I thought they were those stupid blinder sunglasses, or kind of the napping mask. I forget, like what Aokiji used to wear.
Yeah. Well, apparently this is it's called a front mesh, a maedate mesh. And he says, I wonder if baseball caps nowadays have them. They did in the past. But yeah, he's like, those were so cool. So the background of Bavaroa's fashion sense gets even more sordid as we find out here. So
Bavaroa is just fashion faux pas after fashion faux pas. He's a mess.
Yeah. So there you go with that. And the next chapter has this is kind of cool. I like this choice. So he included one of the coloring corner pages where you get a black and white line version of the one of the color spreads, and he chose the one. It's actually the cover for chapter 900 at the very end of the volume. It's the Animal Crossing style one, where everyone's chibi and you got all the minks. It's clearly supposed to be kind of set on Zoe, and so now you can color it in.
Cool,
real nice looking one. And next SBS after that, let's see, a couple chapters ahead. We get the the header here, which is from one Isabel from Brazil, and it's a drawing of Reiju with her butterfly wings forming part of the SBS. And we have a question here about some of Flampe's methods, since she described herself as or she described Katakuri as the king of big brothers, and she calls herself the king of little sisters. So going by that, assuming king of big brothers would be Katakuri, who are the king of older sisters and king of younger brothers. And so she had this award that she referred to, which I translated as best sistress. And in Japanese, it was best emotist, because emoto is little sister. So he says, yeah, well, she's very fastidious. She's very studious about taking surveys from the rest of the siblings about, who's the best older brother, who's the best younger brother. But of course, the results are going to be kind of skewed, because each person you're asking has a different set of, who is an older brother, an older sister, who's a younger brother, younger sister to them. And basically that this was largely designed to prop up, to give a scientific backing for why she would be, number one for the best little sisters. But he provides the top 3 for each of these categories. And, because we don't really have like snappy single word names for big brother versus little brother, I'm gonna have some like, maybe like biggest bro and like best little buddy or something like that. Something like that. So the top 3 for best older brothers is Katakuri, Oven, and Paraspero.
I don't agree with that last one.
Yeah. And the best little brothers, number 1 is Anglais. He was the little motorcycle Yankee guy riding on his caterpillar.
Oh, he don't brush his teeth.
Yeah, exactly. And number 2 is a newly named character, Nugo, which I'm not sure what it's referring to, but he appears to be one of the decuplets, because he's got the little dot eyes, and it looks like he's got the kind of bowler hat with the rim thing around it.
The Dellinger looking kids.
Yeah.
Just one of them specifically?
Yeah, Nugo. Well, he looks like kind of a little, I don't know, the image that Oda chose for him, he's got like the sweat lines going over his face, like he's all worried about something. So he has the look of like, oh, little bro, I'm so worried. And then number 3 is Dolce, who is one of the 2 brothers that were flying around with the balloons that kind of look like Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Oh, is the other one's named Cabana?
No, it's Dolce and Drage. But
that was close.
Yeah, close enough. And the sisters, the top 3 big sisters. Number 1 is Smoothie, which when you say big sister, it seems especially appropriate since she can turn giant.
Right.
More on that in a minute. Number 2 is Amande, and number 3 is Brûlé.
All right.
Good choices. I think those are my top 3 Charlotte sisters as well. So
there seems to be some bias here in the last one.
Yeah, and then the best little sisters, number 1 being Flampe, number 2 being Pudding, and number 3 being Anana.
Not her. She's horrible.
Who is her?
She's the one who wants to cut things.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like Pudding was robbed.
Yeah, well, I mean, Pudding is also evil as well. So, there's.
Is she though?
Yeah, she kind of is.
Are we still having this debate?
I accept her evil side. And so the follow-up to this question is specifically about Smoothie. Based on chapter 894, like what's up with Smoothie? Is it just me, or does she seem kind of huge in this chapter? What kind of power is this, and why is her sword wet? And Oda says, "Well, I didn't really have the space, the number of pages that I needed to actually depict this or to go through with this." But he says that Smoothie has the her power is the ring fruit. Ring meaning WRING, and she is basically an evaporation woman, and so when she squeezes things or people to get the juice out, she can also cut them with her sword to draw all of the moisture out of them and dry them out. And then she stores that liquid in her own body, so then she can get huge that way, and also expel the juice or the moisture as an attack. So
sounds like some real turbulent juice.
Indeed, yeah. So she's kind of like it's very close to Crocodile's powers in certain aspects, but kind of more spongy, I guess. So there you go. That's a more explanation on Smoothie's powers. And moving on to the next SBS, we're getting to the real good stuff that everybody was talking about. The first SBS header, I kind of love this one. Call back to some Alabasta type stuff. Looks like a bunch of brick walls that have been busted through into the form of SBS, and you see Luffy eating happily behind a restaurant counter in the back, as Ace and Smoker seem kind of shocked or happy. I'm not sure. It's a little hard to tell.
Don't you remember the scene?
I remember the scene. I'm just like, why? What's with their expressions? It's a little weird.
I think this is
before and after.
This must have been after Luffy knocked Smoker and Ace through the wall, and they were probably like, "What the hell was that? Wow, check it out! We made the letters S, B, and S. S for Smoker and S for Sabo."
And I think pretty clearly they chose this header on purpose to match the content of the question here, because this reader says, I am a huge fan. I love Ace. So if he hadn't died in the Paramount War, what would he look like now? Like, I want to see Ace at age 40 and age 60. So please, Eiichiro Oda, make with the art. And he obliges, and so we have two different patterns here, because as he says at the bottom, you never know what'll happen in life. So the top pattern is the good outcome, where we get hot Ace, and he just looks older with longer hair, and on the top he's saying, yo Luffy, I see you haven't changed a bit. And then at age 60, he's taken off the cape, and his hair is graying, and he says, "I'm retired."
He looks like Richard Branson. He looks like some billionaire in casual wear. What is it?
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say Shanks, but
that too.
Yeah, there's something there, but and then the bottom, which is the alternative. What could have happened with Ace, and he's definitely a bit wider, and he's got a very silly bow tie around his neck and his shoulders. And he's saying, "Hey Luffy, can I borrow some money?" And then even further into the future, the age 60, his hair color is still the same as the top version, but now he's got a huge mustache and a little goatee, and he's saying, "Hey Chopper, you mind if I just peek into the safe for a little bit?" So
he only goes bald in the bad scenario.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm living the bad scenario of my life.
Oh no.
I've been technically kind of bald for a long time. This just reminded me of all the people, for some weird reason, that say, "I wish Ace was still alive." I said, I want this to be the monkey's paw scenario. It's like, okay,
yeah.
Ace can still be alive, but he's gonna look like Jay Sherman.
He's gonna be a deadbeat.
I like Chippendale's bow tie.
Brother of the Pirate King, he writes a book. Buy my book.
I like the implication too that like if he's asking Chopper to get into the safe, that the implication is that he just kind of hangs out around the Straw Hats ship and just bums them for money.
Ace is Luffy's deadbeat brother who's just trying to get his life back together, and he's sleeping on the couch.
Yeah.
Won't get a job.
Oh man. So the follow-up question after this is about young Hyruden, where we can see him, in Big Mom's flashback as a strapping young lad training to be a warrior. But who's that wearing that very recognizable headdress behind him? Could that be the pirate Stanson, who was originally introduced in chapter 500 back in the in Sabaudi? And Oda says, yeah, he's longtime friends, childhood friends with Hyruden. And as you can see, and he has an arrow because literally the front cover is the Hyruden, the running down the various members of the Hyruden crew. The next chapter is the one that shows Stanson with his full glorious, spiky beard and his big old hammer. And he's like, as you can see on the next page, he has joined Luffy's operation, his umbrella of influence. So well timed there to coincide with that chapter cover. And finally, we have the last SBS segment, and I love this header going back to Foxy pretending to be a nurse on his ship when he fought with Luffy, and he is administering an eye exam to Luffy, who is reading the SBS on the chart, and Nurse Foxy is going, "Oh, your eyesight is so good, but what about your head? Is your head bad? Is it your skull? Do you have a numbskull?" So
this was like my favorite Foxy bit, the Davy back fight.
So good. Oh man, yeah. For a whole arc that was extremely cartoonish, that was like the most outrageously, like Hanna-Barbera cartoonish moment of them all. So the follow-up here, the question here is he kind of treats it the same way as he did with the Ace question. This question actually came from a reader from Vietnam, and he says, I'm a huge fan of Luffy's, and I have a question. So I noticed that when you drew Monkey D. Garp as a child, he looks a lot like Luffy. He's got the big round eyes, but when he's an adult, he's got these more realistic but very narrowed eyes. So what's going to happen to Luffy? Like when he turns 20, is he going to look like Garp? And but it's like, well,
how young is this person?
It's like, well, Luffy in 1 year, Luffy is going to turn 20. So I don't think he's going to abruptly change like that. But let's follow Ace's example and look at some possible futures for Luffy. And Luffy, as a more proper adult, I guess, is he at age 40. He's definitely got the Shanks beard going on and the Shanks kind of hair length happening. Does look, his eyes are a bit more narrow for sure, and he's saying meat. And at age 60, he looks more grizzled. Hair is still kind of the same, very tousled, and he kind of looks more wily and a little bit more evil. And he's like meat.
With one more exclamation point.
Yes, one more exclamation point. And in his alternate future, his monkey's paw future, as Steve called it, the first one, he looks extremely dirty. This is like Pigpen version of Luffy. He's all dirtied up and definitely hasn't shaved in a while, looking real scraggly. And he's like, Pirate King, wow, you must be dreaming, man. And then at age 60, where he's got the hilarious balding pattern where he's got the typical balding thing, but then he's just got the tuft of hair right in the front.
Only proving again that cool guys don't go bald. Because this is not cool, Luffy.
No, not particularly. And he's got a full white beard, and he's like, "Hey, you gonna finish that meat?" And so there you go. So yeah, Oda says, yeah. So basically, what this would suggest is that when Luffy's future goes well, he probably will look like Garp, but you never know what will happen. So that is the end of the SBS.
It's a
He's
very
so
old-looking
beefy.
60-year-old.
I'm sorry. You go one at a time.
Yeah, it's a very old-looking 60-year-old. Like, so most 60-year-olds, that's a bad looking 60.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I,
bottom
and I was
line.
just commenting how beefy, good 60 Luffy looks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lifetime of eating meat, you'll fill out pretty well.
Just make sure you eat some white meat too, Luffy. You gotta keep your
Yeah.
health.
All right, I think that's it for this segment. You guys want to move on to next? I guess we'll move on into the interview segment.
Cool. I'm eager to hear it.
Hello, everybody. This is Alex. Welcome to our brand new segment called Romance Dawn. As of now, we'll workshop that if it doesn't work out. Where we talk to friends and guests about One Piece who are still working their way up through the hundreds of chapters.
Don't say hundreds. You'll discourage them.
They know. If they're listening to the podcast, they know already. This week, we have a very special guest. He is one of the co-hosts of our favorite podcast, Talking Simpsons, as well as Retronauts, which is a really great classic gaming podcast that you should all check out. We can work out plugs later, but please welcome Bob Mackey.
Hello, folks. I'm only 15 years behind on One Piece.
That's not that bad. You're,
That's true.
You're 5 years through.
Yeah, truth.
Reading
That's
years is like dog years, though.
So, Bob, what is your history with One Piece?
It's a long and sordid tale that actually goes back a long time. I am an old anime nerd, and I started going to anime conventions in the very early months of 2001. And at my first conventions, I kept seeing stuff for this thing called One Piece, and I had no idea what it was, but I was like, oh, I really like those characters, and I really like this art style. What is this? And for some reason, like the American anime fan on the internet really didn't talk about One Piece in the early 2000s. It wasn't like as big as it is now or as talked about as it is now. But eventually that led me to the sordid world of eBay Chinese bootleg DVDs. And in the year 2002, I got the first 52 episodes on bootleg Chinese DVD, which I still have today because the subtitles are hilarious. And I suffered through all of those horrible subtitles. All the characters' names are wrong. They're in some cases they're direct translations or they're Chinese translations or something. I don't know. They're very odd. But I even with the Chinese subtitles, I love the show. And after a few years, the manga started coming out here. The awful Fox Kids version came out here, and it was much easier to obtain. I only worked my way up until Drum Island, and that was when I was in grad school about a decade ago. But 2 years ago, I started over from the beginning with the manga and the anime, and now I am back up to where I left off, all the way back then.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, I have a...
We did a whole episode way back when about the Chinese bootlegs. The Dragon Zone was Arlong Park, I believe.
Yeah,
Alex?
Roof, Solon, Sunkissed.
Nami with a
Sunkissed.
Y.
Nami with a Y.
Yes, okay. I do remember Sunkissed. I also remember Usopp's name was Liar Boo.
Liar Boo, yeah. Usopp Boo, yeah.
But then they
it's such
changed it to Crook Boo, and it's like that's an even worse translation. I'll accept Liar Boo, but Crook Boo. No.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun discussing that a couple years ago.
It was like 8.
It was a similar upbringing for me too. I mean, I was already reading the manga, but the 4Kids dub was so bad, and I didn't have my own computer yet to illegally download anime. So I illegally purchased Chinese bootlegs, and that was a better alternative. And I made it to 120, episode 120, I think.
Yeah, like right around the end of Alabasta, I guess, fighting Clockdell.
Yeah,
that
but
one in
humble
particular.
beginnings. I'm kind of glad we all have. we've experienced those bootlegs at one point in our lives.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, despite how big fan subs were and are, I don't remember them coming around for One Piece until like the mid 2000s. I feel like people weren't really keeping up with that show in terms of subbing it. and people weren't really talking about it in America. That was just my experience, though.
Yeah, One Piece has had a very interesting history with its fans, and was despite how huge it had been in Japan, the fan base has kind of been relatively small, and I'd say even now, compared to some of the big heavy hitters like Boruto's dad or Bleach, and back in the early days of the One Piece fandom, I would say 2002, like you say, it was a small community, and there was a fan sub community that was pretty widely known. That also, I would say, poisoned the internet with the word nakama,
Oh
leaving it
yeah.
completely untranslated. I attribute that to a certain they who shall not be named fan subgroup who doesn't do work anymore since Funimation had taken on the reins after the Four Kids dub. Uh, Speaking of, did you end up watching that at all? The Four
The
Kids
Four
dub.
Kids dub?
Yeah.
Only out of novelty's sake, I watched a few, but it was too much. As someone who had lived through the Dragon Ball Z censorship,
Mm-hmm.
it was just fun to look at it happening all over again, but much worse. But luckily, I had seen the originals, the original episodes at that point, so I knew the show was much better than the what the American version was showing me.
Which is good. I mean, that's always it's always good to have that knowledge when you jump into something like One Piece.
But that rap, I mean,
Oh yeah.
I did listen to that recently. We did a One Piece podcast special for our Patreon, so we brought up a lot of the bad times on that podcast. And I think we did play the rap.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I guess it's earned its place in the annals of One Piece history for being so ambitiously bad that it's somewhat decent.
No, they put so much effort into making it worse. It's amazing.
They truly. That's a podcast in itself. There's really so many edits that are so unnecessary that aren't even necessarily about just being suitable for a Saturday morning cartoon. It's strange. It's a really strange dub.
Well, we got the bad stuff out of the way, which is great. So let's move on to the better stuff and then into the good stuff. So where are you now in terms of the storyline, Bob?
I stopped the anime temporarily at the end of Drum Island, and I was going to watch the longer Alabasta arc at the gym because I know it goes on for quite a while. But right now in the manga, I'm in towards the end of Skypiea, so I'm about I just hit volume 30.
Oh, fabulous! That's around the time that I started reading it weekly, which has been quite a journey the last God, how many years?
As he said, 15 around probably.
Yeah, I think where I am in the timeline of the real world of One Piece is 2003 or 2000, maybe early 2004.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
That's about.
I'm looking at it now.
Yeah, I was in the middle of college at that point. Ooh, woof. Well, awesome. This is going to give us a great feel of what what we should not talk about. We'd hate to run the risk of spoiling you.
Oh, actually, I mean, I know a lot of the big spoilers just from being on the internet, but I also just went to the One Piece Tokyo Tower thing
Oh
in
yeah.
Japan. One of the exhibits is basically the Hall of Spoilers, where you walk through this hallway, this funhouse like thing, and you see these dioramas of big spoilers for the series, which are meaningful if you've seen them, but if you haven't seen them, you're like, oh, I guess that happens at some point.
Well, hopefully that won't take the impact out of it when you read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the journey, not the destination, generally. So, what draws you to it? What do you like most about One Piece?
Well, I really like the adventure angle, and as somebody who like grew up watching DuckTales and reading things like Jeff Smith's comic Bone, I feel it unintentionally evokes a lot of those same feelings for me, where it's not just about fighting; it's also about exploration and world building and going to like fantastic new areas. And the fighting angle is a huge part of it for me, and I love Dragon Ball, but I feel like Oda is really capturing more, and I think explicitly recapturing more of the original Dragon Ball, where it was about like going to new places and finding new things, along with some fighting.
Yeah, back in the day when I was trying to get people into One Piece, it was like pulling teeth, and I told a friend of mine, "Oh man, it's so great! You're gonna love it. It's like Dragon Ball," but he was more acquainted with Dragon Ball Z, and he's like, "Dude, this is really lame. This is where's all the cool fighting? Where's the power struggle?" And I'm like, no, it's not like that. It's not like that. I'm sure all of us can kind of relate to trying to get somebody into One Piece and feeling miserably.
Yeah, it's happened a few times.
I mean, I have my own argument. No one has taken me up on it though. Although my friend Henry, he's way into manga and anime, and he just started reading it. But my pitch usually is, it's like X-Men. Like think of it like X-Men. Everyone has a special power, and they travel around together. And you can probably wrap your mind around X-Men.
Yeah, I saw Henry bought the big box set, so I'm glad he's getting aboard. But it totally is like X-Men. There's a fruit, except there's a fruit for every power instead of being mysteriously born with the power.
The pacifistas are sentinels.
It's really no stupider than any other superpower origin in any comic book. In
Yeah.
fact, I like that it's all the same kind of origin.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting in that like the powers are they're sort of a fun secondary thing to the major meat of the series. Do you have a favorite character or an arc thus far?
I'd have to say probably Sanji is my favorite character, and although the fight is not very memorable, I think Arlong Park is my favorite arc because I'm brought to tears every time I've encountered it in the manga, and every time I watch the anime, and it's one of the biggest so far in what I've seen has one of the biggest emotional payoffs, and it's just incredibly well done.
Oh, Bob, you're in good company here.
I was gonna say you made Steve very happy.
Yeah, because when I was getting into the series, the Arlong arc, I would constantly revisit, and don't want to spoil you too much, but we did arc rankings a few years ago, and the Arlong arc we ranked it as number 2 best arc in One Piece. So
That was 3, whichever it was.
I think it was
Yeah.
number 2.
It was
No, I
Gotcha.
totally believe it. I mean, in terms of the villain, he's not a guy with devil fruit power. He's just a big, strong fish guy. The fight is pretty simple, and it's more a symbolic fight than it is an actual battle.
Mm-hmm.
But everything comes together so well, and the epilogue for that whole arc is really great too.
Yeah, the Arlong story arc is usually where people kind of get hooked. That's their big aha. I see why people love this series. Did you have a similar experience with this, or were you kind of on board even before that?
I mean, I was really into just having just watched the anime first. I was really into just the world and the characters and how creative the fights were, and how in the fights the where they're fighting actually matters, where you don't really get that in a lot of fighting series. Like even Dragon Ball Z, as fun as it is, I'm watching it again now, and it's just like, well, all the places they're fighting are just giant chasms or mountains or whatever. It doesn't really matter where they are. But all of these things combined to make me really love just the action of One Piece and how it flowed. But I didn't expect to be as like gut punched by the emotion, and that happened a few times before that with like Usopp's story and Sanji's story. Like every character basically has like the most tragic backstory
Yeah.
that we learn about. But I think Nami's was the most tragic, but she had the best. I think hers had the best resolution.
It's become quite a pissing contest of who has the
Of
saddest
who has
past.
the most tragic? Yeah.
Yeah, on our podcast, we've even done rankings on on that, like who has the saddest backstory out of every single character who has had a backstory, even the most
I have to
ancillary
check that
ones.
too. Steve, you were right. We had Arlong Park at 2, Alabasta at 3, and 2 arcs from where Bob is at number 1. So,
Well, don't set Bob's expectations too high.
oh, it'll just blow your mind. No, yeah, it's a good arc. Yeah.
It's really cool that you mentioned the location of the battles. I did notice that you tweeted about Mr. Four and Miss Merry Christmas and that fight, and that might be one of my favorite fights in the series just because of how clever it is.
Agreed.
Yeah, I was surprised that it's still my favorite fight in terms of the logistics and how everything works out, and just how well the action flows, and how you could tell. I mean, a lot of his fights, and this is why he's such a great artist. You really need to keep in your mind like where everyone is in relation to each other and how they're moving, and he is just so great at doing that. And that fight especially is so complicated, but you're never ever lost. You never have to flip back. Wait, oh, wait, which way was he going, or like where was this person at this point? But yeah, like I just loved how it was so creative and it was so complicated, but it was very easy to track.
And for our backstory rankings, Alex, we had Chopper at 1, a person I can't mention yet at 2, and Nami at number 3. So
Oh, wow.
It's almost like you're telling Bob it's all downhill from here.
no, there's still a lot of good stuff. Yeah, you still have a lot to look forward to.
Yeah. If you like the series, then I would say the best is yet to come.
Yeah, definitely.
So this is a question that I love to hear from people because One Piece is such a vast palette of just wacky side characters who show up like very briefly but have just so much personality. Do you have a favorite like ancillary character, like one who is not a Straw Hat or someone on the side?
Boy, it's probably one of the Baroque works people, but there are so many of them, it's hard to narrow it down. I just loved how the sheer mass of villains in that arc, just how many villains there were and how many different powers there were. Sorry, whoever Vivi was with, when she was masquerading as a Baroque works person, I totally forget his name.
Oh, Mr. Nine.
Yeah, I liked him a lot.
I thought you meant Karu.
Oh, Karu.
Oh, Karu. Actually, I think I might have to go with. Is it Karu?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I like. I'm a bird owner, and I like how goofy Karu looks, and I like this hapless animal with all these superpowered people journeying with them.
Or the super duckbill. What is it? I forget. The full name.
Supersonic Duckbill
Supersonic
Squadron.
Duckbill Squadron.
Oh yeah. I just got to those guys. Yeah. Now I'm remembering all my favorite side characters. Yes. The Supersonic Duck Squadron. Like I mean, I was just in Japan. I should have looked for figures of those specifically, but man, that was like sort of like the Ninja Turtles of the duck world.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
That's a spin-off I'd watch.
Oh yeah, for sure. They have made figures of them as well. Pretty recently, the WCF series of figures, which I think are pretty easy to come by if you eBay the shit out of them.
Who have they not made figures of is the real question. At least earlier on. Yeah, and it's tough to think of though.
My boy Dellinger is without a good figure.
At some point, Steve.
Steve's favorite character, Dellinger, who we gave a Paul Lind voice to when we were doing the manga recap.
Who you'll see in 500 chapters.
Because now that we're out of the era of the 4Kids dub, we could give characters ill-fitting voices.
Also, nobody knows who Paul Lind is except for us because we're old.
You have to be almost 40 to know.
I barely
Approaching
know.
40.
No, it's true.
Yeah, the line Alex mentioned, WCF. If there's a character you're thinking of that you like, and you know maybe 2 or 3 other people like, there's probably a figure of them.
I might have seen these. Are they in very small boxes?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I think I saw all of them at a store, and I was thinking about getting the little spotted bird guy. I think his name is Pierre.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I like how goofy he looks too. But I was like, I'm surprised they made one of him, but I guess they made one of everybody.
Yeah.
There are not enough, but there are a decent amount of wacky bird characters in One Piece.
So I know that you have your awesome Patreon episode coming up, and I don't want to steal any thunder away from that. But can you give us a little bit of a taste of like maybe the coolest thing that you saw when you were over in Japan, One Piece related, or?
Oh sure. I mean, these are existing in separate worlds, and the Patreon thing is something people have to pay for, so it's not everyone is going to hear that. But I can talk about definitely the highlight of my trip was the one, not my entire trip, by the way. It was just one of the highlights of my trips. But it was going to the One Piece exhibit in Tokyo Tower, which thankfully, friend of our show and friend of your show, I think, Maddie Kopp, who does some of our art for Talking Simpsons and What a Cartoon. I just had a few days in Japan where it was like, well, I'm all my friends are busy or working. Where do I go? And she said, go to the One Piece Museum. And I looked it up on my phone and I went there, and it was first of all, I didn't know Tokyo Tower was a thing that you went inside and there were stores and many attractions in there. I thought it was like the Eiffel Tower where you just go up to the top and look out on binoculars and you go back down or something. I thought I had completely a different idea in my mind of what it was. The One Piece exhibit is basically sort of like a 3 or 4 floor attraction, and most of the sort of diversions are like funhouse style things you walk through. Like you can walk through the ship, a recreation of the ship. You can walk through like a haunted house from Brook. You can play some carnival games, but really the major attractions are seeing a lot of Oda's art that's on display, original art. And they're number one, the highlight of my show that you have to pay extra to see was a One Piece live show, and it totally blew my mind. I had no idea it would be that good.
Wow. I've only seen video of the various live shows over the last couple of years, and I think Zach, you went to the big Universal Studios one when
the Universal Studios Japan one where they were doing one. It was amazing. They did a water show, and it was people with like water jetpacks. It was insane.
Well, this was confined to one room, like one little theater in the in the building or in the tower, and it was kind of like a fairly small, like almost black box theater with maybe like 100 people in it. But I will say, like, if you think of a live show at an American amusement park, you think of like a dumb Indiana Jones thing with like smoke bombs and stuntmen falling into like mattresses or whatever.
Of
It's like
course. Yeah.
it's kind of low rent, but this was like astounding. Number one, everyone looked exactly like they should, which is insane. Like nobody should be have the
Mhm.
body of a One Piece character, but all of these performers were like the most in shape people I'd seen in my entire existence.
Yeah.
It was actually kind of distracting. I'm like, oh my god, like what do you do? Like how much do you work out? But what it was, but based on what I read about it at the museum, Oda wrote the scenario and created some new characters for it. But what it is, it's people performing to a pre-existing audio track with the One Piece voice actors and all of the sound effects and everything. So basically, all of these actors have to be trained for this 20-minute piece to hit every mark perfectly, to pantomime all the stuff they have to pantomime perfectly, or else, like, I don't know what would happen if someone screwed up.
Oh yeah.
It would be over. They can't just shut it down and start it over again.
Curtain
It was the
drops.
same at USJ. At the Universal Studios Japan, they had the same thing. Plus, before you like went to the show, they did exactly what you're describing with the mattresses, basically outside in like a plaza area at Universal Studios, and they're reenacting these scenes with like Smoker, and a bunch of Marines. And it's also, I think it's Toei, who owns the rights, doesn't want people to be confused that another voice is coming out of these characters. So, like, in every performance they do, except the Kabuki show, they have the original voice actors voice everything, which is crazy. With the most in shape people on the face of the earth, also, it was insane.
And I was fairly close to the action, and it wasn't weird to see that they did such a great job. It wasn't weird to hear the voices and for it to not be the voice of the actor. And there were songs, there was there was dancing. It told a story. There was a fight, and there were special effects. Like a lot of it was like super advanced, like Japanese theater techniques and Japanese puppetry techniques, where there's a villain that sort of breaks apart like Buggy, and there are like projectile attacks, but it's all done through like projection and stage techniques and everything. But it doesn't look cheap. It's actually like very, very impressive. So I mean, this is for a very small portion of your audience, but if you're in Tokyo Tower and you want to go to the One Piece exhibit, pay extra for the live show. It's not subtitled or anything. The short I saw at Tokyo Tower there's a short you can only watch at Tokyo Tower, and that did have English and Chinese subtitles.
Ooh, wow.
The show didn't, and I vaguely knew what was happening at any moment, but it was just fun to see these people perform so well, and throughout many modes, like fighting and dancing and acting. It was just it's just amazing.
There is a small segment of our audience who always asks, like, "Oh, I'm going to Japan. What's the thing I should go to?" And we always say One Piece Tokyo Tower, which is annoying because it opened the year after I was there. So I didn't get to next time.
It's
Hopefully
funny.
so.
The signage outside of Tokyo Tower, there's a lot of One Piece signage because they want people to know the exhibits there, of course. But in English, it's like it's not just for kids; it's for it's for adults too. And as a white guy in Japan, I went there with some trepidation. Like, is this going to be weird? Am I going to be the only like middle aged white guy amid a bunch of like Japanese people and their children? But actually, there were very few children there. The attendees were mostly people in their 20s and 30s. I mean, I think I was the only white person there, but there were not a lot of families. It was actually, it seemed like, oh, you guys grew up with One Piece too, or like you were younger when One Piece started. So I feel like my expectations were sort of shattered there.
They're annual pass holders.
Yeah.
Probably.
This is my 7th time seeing it this month.
Man, I'm super jealous because the year I went to Japan, they had a show that was dedicated to Sonic and the Werehog.
Weird.
And I felt like I was being ripped off. I mean, I didn't go see it. I was just like, I'm just gonna go up and see what Tokyo looks like from up here. Nothing.
That was
fun.
in Tokyo Tower?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yep. that's my Tokyo Tower story. Not nearly as cool.
They have a Straw Hat store in Tokyo Tower now too, right?
They have a what store?
It's called the Mugiwara store. It's just One Piece merchandise. It's a whole store of One
Yes.
Piece.
Actually, like the first thing you go into when you enter the exhibit is or the park is a gift shop. And when I walked into the gift shop, I'm like, oh, this is a lot of One Piece stuff. That gift shop is what sells the Tokyo Tower exclusive merchandise. Once you leave the park and go down a floor, there is a One Piece store like the size of a regular, just like Target or something.
Oh my God.
And it's every piece
Wow.
of One Piece merchandise you could ever imagine, from games
Oh my
to
God.
figures to candy to gachapon machines. It's like I was happy I stopped collecting things because I probably would have spent $1,000 in the second store
I
after
probably
spending $100
would.
in the first store.
Oh man, that's
It's a dangerous place for us to go if we.
Yeah,
if
I'm
we
not so
Oh, yeah.
sure I want to go anymore.
or maybe it'll be the opposite. I remember going to Akihabara and being so overwhelmed that I didn't buy a single thing. So it could just be that.
Are there any plot threads that you're interested in seeing be revealed from where you are at this point? I know you've had some stuff spoiled for you, but is there anything that comes to your mind that you're looking forward to?
Definitely more of Ace, who just pops up briefly in Alabasta to let you know, like, oh, this is Luffy's brother, and then he just kind of goes away. Also, Mihawk, to see what happens when he comes back, or if he comes back, because he just appears in the in Sanji's arc to fuck people up, and then he leaves. So it's just like, whoa, who is this guy? I know Zoro's going to fight him at some point. So yeah, I know I'm Shanks is still alive, so I'd like to see what happened to him. I don't know. I can't remember if he comes back. It's up to the point where I've read.
It's always good to look out for the post, like after a big long arc is done. There's usually like a post cooldown situation in between arcs where I don't know, where you kind of see the world at large.
Info dump a little bit sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the first big one, that first one was like they tend to do it after every arc, like in between. I think they did in between Drum and Alabasta, and in between Alabasta and Skypiea.
They don't
so
really do it after Skypiea though. I don't
I-
think there's that much.
I guess that's true.
Right? Yeah.
Well, either way,
We asked this question to a lot of guests too. What kind of island would you like to see the Straw Hats on, or do you think the Straw Hats should, be on
Oh boy,
or visit?
I feel like the things I'd be interested in seeing are things I know he's already done, like the Monster Island, like the kind of Halloweeny spooky island. I don't know if there's been like a robot island, but that would be pretty cool. Like, I'm just thinking of One Piece as like a video game, and like what kind of world should they go to next? Because I've seen like desert and sky and those general themes like that, but I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I don't know, a space island with no gravity.
That's what we really want.
Yeah,
we
we're crossing
mentioned that a lot.
Zach, especially.
it's funny that you have that mentality. The just comparing it to a video game, it's sort of like what I want to see. Back in the day when platformers were super prevalent, you had to kind of run the gamut of every single type of level, and I feel like One Piece is similar to that, I guess.
Yeah, the author definitely grew up in that generation who was playing all of those games. He's still fairly young, so I can definitely see how a lot of the stuff he and I kind of both grew up with is really informing what he does.
Far out, yeah. That'll probably do it. Thank you so much for coming on, Bob.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, like I said, we love talking Simpsons so much.
And what a cartoon.
Talking Futurama, talking Critic. We make Simpsons references on our podcast more than probably we should. So
it's a good way to explain One Piece, though.
I think so.
Yeah, we actually we've given Ace the moniker of Poochie because he just sort of shows up and's like, "Hey, what's up? I'm cool new dude," and then he just kind of leaves.
Goes away on his surfboard.
He's a more Rastified Luffy.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Would you like to let the people out there know where to find you, what you've been up to, what you're currently doing?
Oh yeah, so I've got plenty of podcasts, so I don't want to go on too long because it probably would take me like 8 minutes to plug everything. I do a lot of podcasting, but my main podcasts are Talking Simpsons, that's a chronological exploration of The Simpsons, and also What a Cartoon, where we look at a different episode of a different cartoon every week, and all those shows are just fueled by clips and research, and they're really production heavy. So check them out. Those are both free. I also do Retronauts. That's a classic gaming podcast. It's been going on since 2006. So we have like 400 episodes. So if there's a topic that you want to hear about, we've probably done it. And I would check out that episode to see if you're into it. And also, I do have a Patreon that funds me and everything I do. That's the Talking Simpsons Patreon at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. You can get the 2 shows I mentioned earlier a week ahead of time and ad-free if you sign up at the $5 level. But also the $5 level will get you a lot of things like mini-series like Talking Futurama and Talking Critic. And tons of bonus stuff like interviews, deleted scenes from The Simpsons, monthly community podcast. If you sign up for that today and you've never signed up for our Patreon, you will probably have like 200 hours of podcast to go through. Actually, probably more. I don't even want to do the math because we've done a lot in the past year. But that's patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. If you like the free stuff, we have even more great bonus stuff at the Patreon.
I'll just let everybody know that if you subscribe to the Talking Simpsons Patreon, very, very much worth it. Very worth it. So, Bob, thank you for coming on our podcast, and we hope to have you on again in the future.
Oh, yeah, it'd be great. Thanks so much.
Thanks for coming.
This is the anime recap for episode 842. The execution begins. Luffy's allied forces are annihilated? I'm your host, Sam, and today with me once again, we have our good friend Ed.
Hello.
And joining us today, we also have Steve.
Hello. Yeah, I'm back on the podcast when I'm doing the anime recap, too.
It's been a while. It's been at least 2 months.
Quite a while. I feel like I probably haven't missed out on too much, but...
There's cool things in every episode of One Piece. Or there's cool thing.
I think what Ed says it best. You kind of we tune into the anime for like one cool moment per episode, but the Big Mom flashback was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
This episode starts off in a pretty cool way with the cracking
Mm-hmm.
helmet. Like start from behind the helmet. That's interesting. And then like the bit with the eyes. So they're doing little things in this episode, but ultimately this episode doesn't cover much territory.
Yeah. So the title card this week is 4 minutes and 3 seconds, and like you said, Ed, it begins with Judge's helmet breaking open. This is one of those moments where I'm like, would this have been better as like the cliffhanger last week of like seeing the helmet break instead of like the tease that it's about to break?
Yeah.
But yeah, Judge's helmet breaks, and we do not get to see what's under there. I'm gonna keep waiting. Maybe if we keep watching the show, we'll see those eyebrows.
I'm surprised they withheld us like that. It's too bad.
It's like Doflamingo's eyes all over again.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yonji and Niji, they abandon Caesar duty and go help Dad. And Caesar keeps flying, but he bumps right into one Charlotte Katakuri. And Caesar's just making a bunch of goofy faces for most of this episode.
Well, except for the times when it's not Caesar. It's actually Brule.
Right. So Katakuri is about to lay the beat down on Caesar, but his observation hockey warns him of something, and it is Vince Smoke Ichiji. And Ichiji shows up, and he's like, plowing Katakuri, and Katakuri like blows up in half. But like kind of the way they framed it, that like technically by him being like a special paramecia, I think like he couldn't go in half like a Logia could, but they kind of framed it so it's kind of hard to tell if that's what's going on here.
It's telling that I'd already
at least one strand.
It's telling that I'd already forgotten that entire explanation that you just said.
But yeah, Katakuri and Ichiji are kind of having at it, and Ichiji is saying, "Well, it's no use threatening me because I don't feel fear." So it's like kind of bringing that around.
Why was I programmed to feel pain?
So Mom's about to bring down another lightning bolt on Judge before Niji and Yonji come swooping in with like a double team kick.
It looks like the
Sanji...
Inazuma kick from Gunbuster, it's just an old Sentai thing.
Yeah, and so more Charlottes are kind of gaining on Sanji and Reiju. So Sanji's like, okay, gotta put Luffy down so I can have a proper fight with these guys. And so he kind of goes at them kind of one at a time. It's there's a little Sanji versus Oven moment, then a Sanji versus Daifuku again, and then off to the side it's
I like that thing with Daifuku where Smoothie and Oven run after Sanji, but Daifuku doesn't go anywhere. He just starts rubbing himself. So the genie comes out to fight.
And then off to the side of all that is Reiju versus Smoothie, and Reiju gets a good like poison on her leg, and this is kind of going along with what we've been talking about lately, where it's like they are like adding a lot of like little mini fights in order to buy time in this.
Yeah.
So you get like last week there's a little bit of Ichiji versus Smoothie, and now this week it's a little Reiju versus Smoothie. So.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of Ichiji, we have a little extended conflict between Ichiji and Katakuri. They're fighting. The other boys are fighting Mom, and like Mom is trying to crush Yonji, but Yonji's like kind of holding her up, and the ground is kind of breaking underneath him. And that's when like Niji swoops in really fast and like kicks Mom really hard in the head. And I like kind of the cartoonishness of it, where it's like it does kind of look like Mom's skull is like caved inward as the result of this attack. Like it actually looks pretty cool. In an episode that like is really messy looking, there are moments where it's like, oh, there's a lot of personality in that shot at least.
There wasn't a lot of high over animation in this episode.
Right. So there's a lot of reaction shots in this episode. Amongst them is the half of the crew that's still inside of Bedge's body. I like seeing like Carrot and Chopper are like riding on Jinbei's back. They're like, this is where we're safe. And
of course, on the shoulders of our fish uncle.
Yeah. And Jinbei is basically talking about how the Germa, the Vinsmokes, how the fact that they're fearless and like they don't worry about getting themselves hurt. That's part of why they're so scary and strong. And obviously Vito's like, yeah, go Germa, and Carrot is following that up with, do your best, Caesar. I thought that was cute. We're like, Carrot's like, let's not root for Germa only. Let's root for Caesar. I was like, yes, please, Carrot.
It's like, who's the lesser of the two evils?
Really?
I mean, they're all pretty bad. Everyone but the Straw Hats in this fight is pretty bad.
They've all tortured children.
Yes.
So Caesar, he's flying again. He's trying to get away, and he bumps right into himself, and it's like a perfect mirror of himself. And he's like, "What?" And like his face is squashed up against his own face. But then the second face just morphs into Brule, and it's like, "Oh, duh! Of course that's who that is." And Brule's kind of like teasing him, like, I've got so many grudges with you assholes.
A mountain of them. Yeah, this is one of the funnier bits of the episode for me. Just a small moment.
And I never realized how much Brule kind of looks like Caesar, even though she doesn't. But
they got like a similar, like they both have like long faces.
I full disclosure, I started to think, I guess I could ship these two.
It's not the first time that that conversation's been had on this podcast.
I think Caesar's still younger than her, right? Or
let's see here.
Caesar's got to be around the same age as Vegapunk, however old he is. But
or Judge,
I don't think Brule is much older than 40.
You gotta play matchmaker here.
Well, I mean, the oldest children are in their late 40s, so
I do like this kind of move from Big Mom, where she's like grabbing lightning bolts with both hands and just like slapping them against Yonji and Niji at the same time. And Katakuri is getting the upper hand on Ichiji, and Smoothie is wringing the poison out of her leg, so Reiju's poison is not very effective against her. And before Reiju can retaliate, these like purple bindings show up and like wrap around her, and she's like looking over the battlefield, and now the same thing's happening to Sanji. Sanji's looking over, Luffy on the ground, he's wrapped up, and it's Charlotte Gillette. Her powers are kind of trapping everyone. And so like I thought this was a pretty effective like kind of everybody's losing moment, where the good guys are wrapped up, the not so good guys who are helping us are getting beat up.
Yeah, that's the problem with a lot of these intermediate battles when you're watching the anime after reading the manga. It's just that it's hard to take any of this seriously. I understand why they do it.
I like it as set up for what's about to happen, like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Did the cool Sanji action happen already? Because I thought that was pretty decently animated.
Yeah, I think
that was like when he rushed out of Bedge's body. That was in the last episode, I think.
No, it was in this episode, right? When he was fighting.
No, that started before.
Okay.
No, that was in this episode.
Yeah,
that was in this episode. But when he like did the rush out of Bedge's body, that was a couple episodes ago.
What was it? Bad Manners kick course.
Hmm.
I don't know. Sanji's doing capoeira. That's why he's cool.
There's one like really weird close up of like Big Mom grinding her teeth, and like the teeth are like hatched in a weird way. So it's
See,
just, like,
I actually
makes
I like that because it's creepy, and,
Yeah.
and weird and like actually off-putting to look at.
We're gonna have to record that again. We're picking up some weird sound.
Did you mean that for real, Steve?
No,
It's a Simpsons joke.
grinding teeth reference.
Anyway, go on. Sam.
That's around where the eye catch of the episode is, and then we come back from the commercial break. It's like everything's going well for the Big Mom Pirates, except now Katakuri is finally tuning into something that was happening that started last week, which is the falling Tamate box.
It's like he's playing Virtual Boy.
Oh my god.
And I do kind of like. I really like just about everything about this sequence where Katakuri, he like realizes like, oh shit, that's been falling this whole time, and you get these like big shots of the Tamate box like falling through the air, and Stussy and Morgan's like reaching out like, no. They don't know what's in it yet, but like the box is falling. I really like the scope of like how big the chateau feels, and but I thought it was really silly that once the box like actually hits the ground, like it breaks open and there's just like a really normal ass like cartoon piece of dynamite in there.
Yeah. It's just a bundle of 3 sticks of dynamite.
Like if you just told me that it's like a complicated contraption in there that we don't really get to see or need to see, like that would have been fine to me. But then like it kind of breaks the immersion when it's just like a piece of dynamite or just a bundle of dynamite.
Yeah, it's weird that would blow down the entire building. Like you'd think it'd have to be a special bomb, right?
Yeah. But yeah, it's a huge explosion, takes a huge chunk out of the chateau. You see the chateau like slowly falling, and then the narrator has to have a moment of like, pause, let's back up a bit so we can re-explain why the Tamate box is here and why it's a bomb. Which I believe we've gotten this explanation just a few months ago when the wedding was about to start.
This goes on for like over a minute.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Dude,
a bunch of flashbacks.
It's been like hundreds of episodes. It's fine.
Well, it's been like maybe 8 episodes since we saw these flashbacks again.
Yeah, they this isn't the first time they've reminded us.
Yeah.
Although Baron Niwatori,
yes.
Count Niwatori, he cockadoodle-doos away as the building tips over. And
yeah, I like seeing like the chateau like breaking from the inside. I like seeing like rooms that we've been through in this arc earlier, like just like getting wrecked as the building's falling, and you see like Niwatori just like standing up straight, like, what should I be doing about this? And like the teacup in his head is like slowly like spilling over his face.
I love that little detail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, you get some citizens down in the streets running away because this giant castle's about to fall on them. Yeah, Morgan's taking pictures like, why would the Tamate box have a bomb in it? And Mom starts to slip, and she's like losing her footing, and she's rolling and rolling. And like when she falls off the edge, it reminds me. There's a shot in Hard Knock Days that I really like, where like Luffy gets like flung into the air, and you can see how like big Dressrosa looks in the Hard Knock Days opening. And it's basically that shot, but like with Big Mom over Whole Cake Island.
Yeah.
Which I really liked, and that's when Bedge is like realizing that, oh shit, we're actually winning. Like we thought all was lost, but somehow we're winning, and he turns out this just amazing maniacal laugh.
I thought you were joking, like, because I saw that tweet. You tweeted that 2 days ago when the episode aired, and it doesn't even sound like him. Like, he's crazy.
It's the first time where I've really given like serious thought to Bedge's voice actor.
Yeah.
He was really having fun with that moment.
That was good. Steve, what did you think about the episode overall?
God, like, yeah, the one thing I'm really gonna remember other than Sanji's capoeira kicks is Capone's evil maniacal laughter at the end. I'm trying to refresh myself on who his voice actor is. God, I would like to rip that scene just so I can make a tweet saying, like, when you hear a really funny joke. It's just it's really unsettling. It kind of reminds you, it's like, oh yeah, like despite this guy now kind of being a protagonist and being an ally of Luffy, he was still like a sick sadistic dude beforehand. But
he's the voice of
oh, yeah.
Oolong from Dragon Ball.
Yes, I remember hearing that, but I just wanted to verify that.
Yeah.
He was indeed Oolong. He sounds completely different. Yeah, it's kind of like key moments, stuff kind of blurs together. I should, was it Ken O'Connor on Twitter? I'll just give you a shout out. You did link me to a video you made of Big Mom continuously rolling down the hill to a Katamari song.
It's pretty good.
Go check it out. I think the podcast was tagging it too. Yeah, just it. A little slowly paced, but there were some fun moments like Caesar. Caesar's great in the anime. I mean, Caesar's great in the manga too. Like we always have fun with him, despite him being an awful person who should die. But the moment with him and Brule is really great because Ryosei Nakawa is such a fantastic voice actor and still probably one of the best casting choices they've made in the anime in more recent years. But yeah, and I feel like the explosion kind of didn't. I really didn't feel too much of the weight of it. It was kind of the explosion kind of seems more of a minor inconvenience than like a big turning of the tables, but it was all made worth it just for Capone's reaction at the end, and I think that's what I'm going to remember from this episode. This episode I don't remember the number for, but if I'm watching this episode,
842.
842. I will always remember 842 for Capone's maniacal laughter.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't have much to add. I got out pretty much everything I wanted to say during the recap. Sam, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, because when I first watched it, I was really bogged down by the usual stuff, the pacing. I thought this was like such a really kind of it's a very unpolished, unrefined looking episode for most of it. Even if there are like shining moments in the animation, it's like it's really like not super aesthetically pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think that I still feel the same way as last week, where it's like we're given these like we're fleshing the action out by giving like these characters more fights that they wouldn't normally get if they were just adapting the material straight, which I guess is a better option than just like stretching everything out. But it still stretches the actual story out, so it doesn't really end up making that much of a difference. But I really I kind of disagree with what Steve was saying about like not feeling the tables turning. Like that's what I did feel out of this episode, where like they really kind of put the right emphasis on the good guys losing, and then the Tamate box completely, because it's the thing I love about the Tamate box is like it's like something that the protagonists did without even knowing it, but they still kind of are going to get credit for doing it. And so it's this thing that does kind of turn the tables. And I love how I just looking at like the next episode preview, like I'm actually genuinely looking forward to spending half an episode just watching everybody fall.
I like the big news Morgan's taking pictures as he falls. That was good.
Yeah. Like that's a thing that sort of really brings a lot of the kind of adventurous spirit of this arc kind of into the forefront. Like I'm kind of really I'm really excited to see how the ending of this episode like flows into the beginning of next episode. So it's not like a great episode, but like I found myself feeling much more fondly of it when I like rewatched it to take notes.
Right on. All right, you ready to round off the show?
Yes.
All right, let's do it.
Certainly.
This has been the One Piece Podcast, episode 525 for the week of Monday, June 25th, 2018. And on this episode, we had our Volume 89 recap. Thank you, Stephen, for taking us through that.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to thank Alex and for doing the interview with Bob, and thank Bob for coming on. If you want to listen to Talking Simpsons, that's at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. Also, I believe you can subscribe on any podcast machine. So, coming up, we have Anime Expo. The One Piece Escape Room will be there. So if you are at Anime Expo, try and get, I guess you got to get tickets for that. It's a special event, right?
Yeah, you have to pay for it. I think it's no more than like 25.
That's not unreasonable for an escape room. Those things take take some work to put together.
And when you think about it too, it just means less people probably waiting for it. So
the real One Piece fans, they can probably still get in. Yeah.
Because AX is nuts, so there's gonna be a ton of people there. So
Anime Expo is Nuts Island.
It truly is.
I mean, there was quite a bit of Charlotte family cosplay last year. I bet there'll be even more this year. I wonder if everyone's going to come with Reverie cosplay. It's only been a few weeks. If anyone's been able to put that together, I'd like to see pictures. So, I'm sure I can count on people taking pictures.
Yeah, I would love to see some
Lincoln.
Oh my god. I will lose my damn mind. I'll just say this right here. If you cosplay as Burger Ham Lincoln, and you don't just throw on one of those Uncle Sam top hats, you got to try on this one. I'll give you free art shit at my table.
Which means you have to go to his table in costume, but that'll probably happen once.
Yes, once.
Yeah. All right. So next week on the One Piece podcast, we're going to have anime recap of episode 800. Also, thank you, Sam, for coming on for anime recap for episode 842. Next week we'll have a recap of 843. Stephen will join us for chapter 909 recap.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's about it. But Stephen, how can people contact you out on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Translatosaurus.
Fantastic. And Steve?
You could find me on Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, Steve Yurko, all one word. That's my name. That's the username. And yeah, I'll be at AX. I'll be in the Artist Alley. My table is K34. If you saw me last year, I think it's the same exact table. So I'll be easy to find.
Fantastic. All right. And for our other hosts, Zach_Logan and Dude! On Twitter, I am Edward E. One Piece. The podcast can be found at onepiecepodcast.com, twitter.com, youtube.com, and facebook.com/OnePiecePodcast. OnePiecePodcast@gmail.com is our email address. One Piece Podcast is our Skype name. Go to reddit.com/r/OnePiecePodcast. Leave us some piece together, mostly on weeks where there are chapters. Not this week, unfortunately. But next week we'll have some piece together for you. You can subscribe on SoundCloud, subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, or call us on our phone number. That's 347-497-MAGI.
Maji.
347-497-6254. Call anytime. With your own SBS for us, please. Please ask us questions. All right. That's a quick episode this week. So for the One Piece Podcast, my name is Ed.
And my name is Steve.
We'll see you next week, everybody.
Ta-ta.
Bye-bye.